about AI, and then we're going to have a great discussion, which is more important. I'm going to talk about 5 or 6 things that you have to pay attention to right now. First of all, AI has been around for a while. It's just taken a quantum leap recently with the introduction of services like ChatGPT and Google's Bard. First thing I want to say, because I think a lot of people don't understand it and are a little scared of it, is because they watched The Terminator or other movies, is AI is not going to kill you, but it's not going to not kill you, because it's going to be run by people who may want to kill you. So you have to be thinking about the use of AI and what it's used for as a tool or a weapon. It certainly has enormous capabilities to be used as a weapon, and it's really important that our regulators and companies that are doing it understand this and do something about it. At the same time, the possibilities are endless. It's the most important leap of the internet since mobile, which was the last massive change in computing. So I'm going to go through a few things. It's being rolled out to consumers in real time, which is a great thing and a bad thing, meaning we're the experiment being conducted by these big tech companies about how AI is used. This happens a lot in tech. You become the product. And so how people use it, they're studying right now as people use these things in real time. That means there's going to be a lot of problems. That means there's going to be a lot of mistakes, and there's going to be a lot of issues. And that's already popping up all over the area, whether it's a song by Drake that suddenly got made that isn't actually Drake in The Weeknd, to misinformation, to deep fakes, to things that aren't true. They're called hallucinations, that they give you answers on that aren't actually factual. Really problematic, but it works out the kinks in real time. Again, this is a good thing and a bad thing, because tech companies really shouldn't be doing this to people, but that is what's happening. It is rife with legal issues, and it's something that all companies have to be thinking about, especially content companies and advertising-based companies. The major legal issues, of course, are around fraud and misinformation, and obviously we're going to have to deal with that and understand what's real and what's not, and what the provenance of the stuff you're getting is. It's as if search, if you went on Google search, it decided to give you the wrong answers to whatever you asked it. Google search almost never gives you the wrong answer. In fact, never at this point. But AI does all the time, and so there's all kinds of issues around that from a legal point of view. But most importantly, it's copyright, because it's pulling from sources all over the place, data sets that they get, that they input into these systems. And so it can grab all kinds of content that legal copyright owners own and commit a new digital form of plagiarism. And I think it's really important to keep in mind that if that happens, there'll be a lot of legal fights over this stuff, and companies that own content and companies that are using the data have to be aware of the many legal problems that are going to arise from it. And so it could be caught in a legal traffic jam, essentially, because of that. And that will hinder its development. And it should. The original internet, as people may or may not know, there was a law passed by Congress called Section 230. It was part of a larger law. And it protected internet companies that were nascent at the time from immunity. They gave it immunity from problems, including copyright issues, et cetera. And it's been a problem now that these companies are larger because they can't be sued for anything. But in this case, AI is eminently suable. And so you're going to see a lot of copyright problems going forward, which they will sort out over time, just as companies did with YouTube and others in the original days of that company. One of the other things that's really important to imagine is that right now, even though it's making a lot of mistakes, it is self-learning, and it will improve with time. Recently, this week, the New York Times inputted all of Jane Austen into their little chat, into their GPT. People are making all kinds of small GPTs of all kinds of topics. And it was able initially to sound badly, like bad Jane Austen, and then it started to sound like good Jane Austen. So it can start to make anything once it gets the data. They can input all of my writing and suddenly start writing like me. Initially, it will be bad. Later, it will be good as more and more data is inputted into the system. So unlike human beings, it gets better as it gets more information. Human beings usually just stay exactly the same. And so it's self-learning. And that includes everything from cars to healthcare to lots of areas. Even though there's a lot of controversy about self-driving cars, when a car gets in an accident, which it inevitably will, usually with a human is usually the problem when that happens, it will learn, and all the other cars will learn at the same time. Fourth, it is controlled by big companies. That's a real issue, I think, for a lot of people. Right now, even though a lot of AI companies are being funded, most of the power of AI resides in the same giant companies that control most of the internet now. I think people forget that the internet was a public trust. It was we invented it, the taxpayers paid for it, but all the value went to big, giant private companies. Same thing here. A lot of the early AI stuff was government funded, but now it's being controlled by companies like Google or Amazon or Microsoft now, which has been investing in ChatGPT, which is the most popular right now among all the different things. That's not a great thing when big companies control most of the information, and it's worrisome from many points of view that large companies will want both benefit economically from this and also control it. There's not a lot of incentive for some of these companies to behave in ways that are good for society, and what we've seen happen on the internet, including false information and conspiracy theories, is going to be quantum in the AI universe. While people think it is job destroying, it certainly is. It is also job creating. And so we're going to have to wait and see what happens. A lot of jobs that are rote are going to go away. And that's just, you can look at lots of areas, radiology, legal, all kinds of stuff will be eliminated because the computer can do, these generative AIs can do it a lot better. Summarization, all kinds of things. And that will eliminate jobs. One might argue that these jobs shouldn't exist and we should create better jobs or more jobs that are more akin to humans, because humans will have to be running these AIs. But there's going to be a lot of job destruction, no matter how you slice it. Again, some suggest that these are jobs that should be destroyed and that consumers can do better. After all, we don't churn butter anymore. We make it in different ways. We do manufacturing. It used to be done by hand. And so a lot of stuff like that will be swept away immediately. The good news is there's lots of opportunities for new jobs, and we just don't know what they're going to be. Everyone thought manufacturing, the Industrial Revolution, would be the end of jobs, but it wasn't. It created more jobs. It got rid of bad jobs. It created some bad jobs, but eventually it will sort itself out. Particularly in healthcare and education, there are huge opportunities to work with all the different chatbots and generative AI, because it takes away the boring stuff from people to be more creative. And that's where people really need to lean into the creativity of humanity, to use these things to take away mundane tasks and move forward. So I'm less worried about that than other people, although it certainly will have an impact on those jobs that can be digitized. Something I always say to people is that everything that is digitized, that can be digitized, will be digitized. And in this case, it will be done rather fast. Another thing that people are worried about is that these are sentient beings. They are not. They're computers. They are not people. They sound like people, but they are not people. And that they are not real. They're controlled by people. But there's something called cognitive hyperreality. You think they're real. They're not. A lot of people have been pulled in because you're going to be talking to them in ways that you didn't. It's not like Google. These will respond to you in real time. They will feel like people. Lots of people have been doing little experiments on these generative AIs, and it feels a little creepy. That's because people are asking creepy questions. Again, always at the center of the problem is a person versus these things. They are not real. I don't know how to stress that any more than I can. Robots are also not real. Also, aliens, I think maybe perhaps they're real. I don't know. I think we need to lean into the positives of the things that could happen, because some of the stuff is really mind-blowing, including and especially drug discovery. Drug discovery is trial and error. With these generative AI and other machine learning capabilities, we can create drugs, and a lot of the COVID drugs were made using AI, protein folding, all kinds of things. It's really astonishing how quickly these computers can input data and digest it and then come back with great answers that will help human doctors figure things out. Drug discovery is the most important thing here, and that will especially around cancer drugs. Two more things. Regulation has to happen. There is no regulation on the internet, and we see what has happened, including misinformation, conspiracy theories, use of the internet by malevolent players. This is all going to happen here. If not, our regulators don't act. There's a lot of opportunity here to regulate these things, both through legal means and through laws. They should put them in place right away, and you should press your policymakers to do it. They have to do it. They regulate everything else, and they can do this. But it requires regulation early and often, and not to hinder innovation, but to make sure there are guardrails. All technologies do better with guardrails. All things do better with guardrails, and it doesn't mean it will quash it. The last thing I'll say is, people try to think of what it is and what it's doing. It's the internet on steroids. And if you think about it that way, it just is a better version of the internet. It's the next iteration of the internet that you're used to using and people used rather easily. And with AI, it just becomes easier to use, and it will surround you. It will surround you with glasses and ears, and it will talk to you in ways that it didn't before. If you use all kinds of audio services from Amazon and other places, it's like that, but it's even more immersive. So it will begin to know you and make your life easier. That's the promise. At the same time, if we don't put regulations in place, if we don't put guardrails against companies, if we don't pass privacy bills, it could be a nightmare, and it could be used by malevolent players very easily, just as the internet has. The internet's been great for dictators and authoritarians and surveillance lovers, and so that is where we have to watch out for, and the manipulation that could happen to people. And so I'm quite positive about this, but at the same time, we need to be wary of what's coming next, just as we should with all inventions. There's a great poet named Paul Virilio. He said when they invented the ship, they invented the shipwreck. When they invented electricity, they invented the electric chair. All good technologies come with downsides, and we have to be thinking of them as we move forward, because it could be really transformative, and at the same time, it could be disastrous.
Welcome to the stage. My name is Jen McDonald. I'm with VMLY&R, and thank you so much for joining us. Brian and Ian and Kara, that was very interesting. Thank you so much. So a question for you, Kara. How should companies be baking AI into their 3 to 5 year plans, and knowing that it's important that regulators are also involved? How do companies instill kind of the right ethical guidelines around AI as well?
Well, you have to think about first how it's going to affect your business. Before you get to all that, you have to understand where it's going to affect and what you can improve and remove from the system. Again, a lot of stuff is rote in businesses, and stuff you don't need, like press releases. I'm sorry to PR people, but they're not
my first job.
Okay, they can be done in certain ways. They have a form and format to them. So anything that has a form and format, especially around content, summarization, just finding data, get me this right away. And it can be, the thing that people don't realize is when the internet started, when I started covering it way back in the 90s, someone said, what's the internet? I said, it's everything. And they're like, what? I said, well, what's a tree, a car, a bush, like a building? It's everything. You can't know what it is. And that's one of the things, you can't know what it is, but you have to start thinking, what can we use it for that it takes a long time to do? And then you have to figure out where the protections are. Most you don't going to need protections. It's just, this is going to make press release writing easier. It's going to make this easier. It's going to make data input. And if you think about it like a spreadsheet, like right now, you don't use an abacus, do you? No, you just put the numbers in, it goes blah, 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 and it comes out. You wouldn't ever use it. It can be like that for businesses. It's like a spreadsheet for text. If you boil it down, and anywhere you can find that advantage, you should do it because it's more efficient.
That's great, thank you. I mean, Kara's talked about this before, but the future of work is definitely changing with AI in many ways. And forgive the self-serving question, but should I or should others be worried about their jobs? But more importantly, also our kids, and they should be thinking about jobs differently. What are your thoughts on that?
It's changing everything, not just the way that we go to work, but our relationship with work. And over the last century, we followed a model of increasing specialization. We've gone kind of industrial route where if you have expertise, that guarantees you employment and a role. And what's happening is AI is abstracting a lot of the technical necessity to be able to perform in those roles. And with the Industrial Revolution, we mechanize labor. With AI, we're digitizing skills. What that does is it abstracts a lot of that technical expertise necessary to perform in technical roles. And the idea of specializing carries less weight. It carries less importance. And we're moving into what I believe is what I call the era of the creative generalist. And those are people who have a couple of different areas of expertise and depth, but most importantly, a large swath of interests and hobbies and exposure. And it creates an enormous amount of connective tissue that you can start to borrow in or even drop yourself into to perform at a proficient level. Right now, we're talking about AI as being okay in some areas, but getting really good, like really fast. And all you really need to know is, what is the output I'm looking for? How does that field operate in some way? Understanding its operating model, and then you can start to perform very proficiently. So the idea of being more of a creative generalist, I think, is going to be exponential for organizations. Now, a lot of organizations hear this and say, oh, cool, I can have one person do the work of whole teams. And that is true. But what that does, that's looking at the future from the paradigms of the past. You're looking at it efficiency, industrial model again. Where this really starts to take off is when you have whole teams working in that type of a model and saying, well, now I have multiple creative generalists. I don't just get linear growth, I get exponential growth in productivity because of that collaboration of multiple people with, instead of a few skill sets, dozens of skill sets. So what I firmly believe is that AI isn't going to kill our jobs, it's going to kill our job descriptions. It's going to kill what we associate as the very linear role that you play within an organization and say, this is what we have you as in the balance sheet, you're accountant number 2 in the finance department, and that's what you do. That's not going to be the way it is anymore.
We briefly talked about healthcare. I mean, at 18% of the GDP, surely AI can make a dent in healthcare.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Kara talked a little bit about that before, and AI has been around for a while in healthcare with things like AlphaFold that have been helping in terms of research and drug discovery. I think what's interesting about this moment is it used to be more with the researchers and the scientists in the back room, and we've now leapt across, so it's now this massive multiplayer open source testing that's happened. And there's definitely a downside to that you talked a bit about, but I think part of the reason for that is the accessibility. And the impact to healthcare is going to mean that we're going to have better information. We're going to be more informed as patients or more informed as caregivers, have more informed doctors. That will
My brother, let me interject. My brother's an anesthesiologist, and we were talking, and he goes, I use it all the time because he's like, I'm doing this liver transplant, and what do you think about these things? And he says it gives, because medicine's so full of data, it's very easy, and it goes so far, and then you can input patient data too, which is always all over the place. And he's like, it gives me the right answers every time. And I'm like, I hadn't thought about that. And so then he employs it as an anesthesiologist. So it's a really great tool that never would have happened. It's not like there were 10 people there advising him.
Right.
It never would be. It was really interesting how he uses it.
Yeah, I do think it will change. Like there are boards that come together to advise, and in the past it's been people that are listening to the information about the case, looking over the data. I think as sensors become more of how we track our movement, our health, it will lead to much more informed AI that's helping those docs, and it's really augmenting them. I think it's going to help to elevate the standard of care across the board. I would hope that we're able to get to a point where we have a health digital twin. So it would actually know all the information about me, know how I'm sleeping, all the things that my doctor won't need to ask when I come into the office anymore. But we'll also be able to use that for predictions. So if you come down with cancer, God forbid, then you could look at the different types of potential treatments. And what does that mean in terms of quality of life? What does that mean in terms of percentages? And really bring that to life in tangible ways.
Seems like a real potential for more accessibility too for healthcare as well.
It's just more knowledge in one place that humans can't conceive of. If you go to a doctor's office and you see all those files, that's so full of good information. Like, but it never is accessed because we can't. We're just not smart enough unless we stick a chip in our brain. And that's the thing. We can't conceive of what's there, and it can if it's inputted.
Kara, you've been in deep conversations with the CEO of OpenAI, Sam Altman. What are your big takeaways?
Well, Sam is a very thoughtful person. I've known him since he had his failed startup right at the beginning of his career. But, he's had an interesting career. I think he's very thoughtful compared to a lot of people. Now, it's a low bar in Silicon Valley. So let me just say that's where we start. But I think he's really thoughtful about where it's going and how it's being rolled out. And I think he correctly had to align with Microsoft. He tried to get money from the government, but the government would choose to fund things like space travel, et cetera. Isn't in that business. It should be in that business, but it's not. And so I think he's really thoughtful about where it's going. He's called for regulation and not in the fake way tech people do. I think he really understands the need for that and that you start off on the right foot. I think he's also aware that there's going to be huge problems and abuses. And I think that's good. He's a thoughtful person. My issue is that I'm not worried about the Sam Altmans of the world. I'm worried about the next people who, similar thing with the Google people years ago when they tried to take over search. They were like, I said at least Microsoft knew they were thugs. They can't control search because it's so important. And they said, we're nice people. I said, I'm not worried about you. I'm worried about the next people. Like, I don't know who's going to take this information and use it for abuse. And you've seen it around the globe in authoritarian countries, the abuse of information. So I always assume the worst of humanity because everything we've invented, people have found a way to turn into a weapon. I don't think any student of history understands that.
What do you feel like we can do about that dynamic? Because I think there's a lot of people who feel the same way, probably can't articulate it as well as you, but don't necessarily know what they can
What do we do about people?
That is the question.
Put the bad ones on Mars. There's always a bad player in every single technological revolution, always, and lots of them. And they have nefarious and various interests. This misinformation stuff didn't just happen.
You hear about the alignment problem, and we always think about that as being misalignment between us and the AI, but we have an alignment problem as people.
Yes.
We can't get along about anything. So imagine when this tool gets in the hands of all different types, who makes the choices? How do you decide right or wrong? And I don't know how you code around that chaos. Like you have to, we're gonna have to find ways to create sort of that responsible
AI doesn't want to kill us. I mean, I love the Terminator movies, they're fantastic, but it's the people.
Yes.
100%.
And to your point, Brian, we're getting to a point now where it's not just the big guys. It's any one of us can actually create new variations and work with the open source models. And we're getting to a point where individual developers, and to borrow a phrase from my friend Steve Mills, who's an AI ethicist, is you have micro actions that have macro effects. And it can be any one of us that has that impact, not just Google, Microsoft, OpenAI.
And also when one or two people are in charge of companies. Look, Mark Zuckerberg controls Facebook. There's just like 20 of them. And so they all are fallible people and inadequate to the task. I'm not saying they're stupid or anything else. It's just who could decide big ideas like this? Like 2 people decided to throw Donald Trump off of social media. 2 people. Maybe it was the right decision as far as I'm concerned because he was incendiary. But nonetheless, it was 2 people. And so that's where we sort of fail as a society.
So speaking of OpenAI, they've introduced a plugin architecture for ChatGPT, and it makes kind of solving math problems possible. But what's going on with OpenTable and Kayak? What are they up to with their plugins, and where is this going?
Well, yeah, I think they're trying to make all their information accessible, right? So, and it's really about ease. They're trying to offer new ways for consumers to engage. And I think if you think about then the implications for brands, and marketers, the first wave of search, we had to think about SEO. Like, how do we make sure that information's accessible? And brands are gonna have to consider that same question. How do you make sure the information is accessible to bots? At some point, Bing has already started to think about the attribution, where the sources came from as part of their sort of synthesized responses. And then
Blockchain is back.
Right, exactly. There's actually a reason for it, which is nice. But paid will start to come in, which I think you've said maybe the original sin of the internet. It'll be interesting to see how does paid become integrated into synthesized results, the answers.
For these services, advertising is literally the evil of the internet, and that's why it favors enragement for engagement versus paying for something. That's one thing I like about chat. You pay for it. So it doesn't have an interest in making you crazy.
Yeah, I think that the idea of having the plugins is just like one step in the whole journey. The idea of what we're doing with search is we went there for answers, then we wanted, for search, then answers, and now we're kind of getting to a point where we want action and assistance. So we're going there not just to search for an answer, not to scroll through links, we're looking to get something that says, okay, I'm coming here with a problem. I want the problem solved by the time I step away from the interface. And plugins is one step in that journey. And I think that search and social are the 2 areas where we're gonna see the most consolidation of all these different startups popping up. I mean, there's whole websites that are dedicated to the hundreds of new AIs that are popping up every day for 3D modeling, for coding, for whatever you name it. It's impossible to keep up. You just can't do it. And of course, what's the next stage? We have fragmentation and then consolidation. And I do think that it's going to be the big players that come in and say, that's now part of search. That's now part of social media. And it becomes part of these bigger super apps that we're engaging with on a regular basis. So you are able to create and interact with these interfaces that pull all this together in a more intuitive way. It's really cool to see the innovation in a lot of places, but it is impossible to keep up with.
One of the things many years ago when Google was, everyone was like, oh look, you can type in a box. I thought this is Neanderthal. Like what are we doing this for? We're typing words and I said to someone at the time, I'm like, this is going to seem like ridiculous at some level, but it endured. It really didn't. People are like, I'll type it into a box, which is silly.
We're back.
Or I have this Apple Watch on my hand. It now is much more useful, but for the most part, most of these things were useless because what it should be doing is saying, that donut you ate at 10 o'clock, your blood sugar just thing, you need to do this to walk, get up and walk, but not just ping you, but just like talk to you.
Right.
Say you shouldn't have eaten it, this is what you need to do to stop it. Wearables become, I used to call them unwearables because they don't help you. What does 10,000 steps mean? This will explain it to you. And it's supposed to, the word that tech people are using is co-pilot, it's your co-pilot. It's actually a good term. Like, it's your little advisor that's like telling you things. It's like, oh, you made a mistake here. Oh, you're late here. But in ways that they haven't been doing. It's been so you go and find it.
Yeah.
Now it will find you. And that's a big paradigm shift.
I love that. That's
could be
actually
great.
really, really exciting. Now I know why I got this thing.
Yeah.
Well, and think about it in other areas. So how can brands bring those plugins to the experiences that
Yeah.
you have? So as you get in your car in the morning, it should know many things. You can have an informed conversation with it to ask a question like, would you like to listen to Kara's latest podcast?
Yeah.
Would you like to listen to this radio station?
Yeah, you listened to it yesterday. Did
Do
you
you need
like
a
it?
double espresso because had a late work dinner or whatever it might be? Like you can actually have much richer interactions. I think that's the thing that we can look at is what can we explore and where can we add more value to this?
Yeah, it really seems like it can enrich experiences.
Be efficient. It can be the way it's done now is we do all the work and we input. It should be input back at us.
So you talked a little bit about this before, Kara, about the role of government and the responsibility of government. But Ian, you mentioned that it's really just will be in some ways impossible to keep up, and we know our regulators sometimes have trouble keeping up. What do you think the role of government can and should be, given that dynamic?
The problem with legislation, and it's actually not a problem, it's designed to move slowly. Legislation by design is to be slowly, to make considered decisions, and to make whatever decisions we implement well thought through, but also to make sure that the right consequences are thought through and put in place. That works for most of society. The problem is when technology moves at an exponential curve, legislation stays at the same pace it has from 50 years ago. You don't have solutions that have teeth. You don't have a world where we can actually rein in the micro actions of individual developers that can have macro effects. What is the solution and what is the role for government? At this point, without taking a whole conference or seminar on it, I would say more involved and bigger. But a specific action at this point in time, I'm not really aware of. I am more in the camp right now of them being able to say, I align with Tristan Harris on we should be slowing down the public deployment of these models. Continue the research. That's important because we want to keep that up. But the public deployment comes with all sorts of other consequences. There's no way you can stop it.
You know what? They could pass a privacy bill. There's a lot of this idea that government doesn't know what it's doing is not true. It's just not true. They do. They regulate cars. They regulate pharmaceutical stuff. They regulate planes. You know, planes are hard. All kinds of things. They can regulate this. It's just a question of the basics, privacy. We don't have privacy legislation in this country on a national level. It's insane. It's just insane that we don't, at this point in the internet thing, we don't have data protection. We don't have algorithmic transparency. There's all kinds of things that just guardrails, right? Or imagine no traffic laws. Everyone would be driving all over, the place, all over the road, all over the roads and the meadows and whatever they feel like doing. Stop signs are good, and so it's a stop sign. It doesn't mean stop, it means it's a stop sign. And so, although I ignore a lot of stop signs.
Brian, the last few months feel like one of those seismic shifts. I mean, I remember when the iPhone came out, and actually, I remember building a client's first app, and it sort of seemed very magical. Now I look back at that app, and it's actually quite dumb. But it's amazing. We're kind of in this moment of a seismic shift. How will AI change how we shop and interact with brands? And I'm sure we'll do some silly things at first, or brands will do some silly things at first. But what should marketers be thinking about?
Certainly. I think with this accessibility, I think there will be our general comfort with automation will rise dramatically. So, and the implication of that is I think it will completely upend the shop and buy experience. So I'll have an automated bot that will help with my shopping list, maybe make me healthier, help me to try some new thing. I'll have a bot that's helping me keep an eye out for whatever pair of shoes. So the impact of brands in that case becomes, not just thinking about B2B or D2C, but we're gonna have to think about direct to machine or machine-to-machine ways to inject ourselves into that shopping and buying journey. I think it'll disrupt and change at different rates of speed, industry to industry. We don't you didn't talk to a travel agent, I don't think, coming in here, right? So there will be industries that'll completely be upended. There'll be other industries that I think that automation may take a little bit more time, but it will definitely be something to keep an eye on.
It's got to be invisible. One of the things that drives me crazy about it is how much work we do as consumers with all these things. It's as if we go, they like throw things on the floor of a retailer and we have to go find stuff. That's how it is now. It really is. You type it and you find, oh no, oh yes, no. It's crazy. It has to be, one, valuable. Like, is it help me? Does it help me in some way? Does it help my time? Whatever. The second thing is it's got to be everything. You have to be able to see everything so you get the best answers. And then it has to be invisible. The fact that the tech people insert so much of themselves on us, it's crazy. Like we go, I used a hairdryer this morning. I didn't go, the electrical grid, right? It's just there.
Right.
It's just, and it doesn't talk about itself. And so tech people love, because they're egomaniacal and narcissistic, they love to talk about themselves. The technology, you shouldn't know what it's doing. It should just intuitively be useful to you. And when you get little bits of it, like Amazon is quite good on intuitive stuff, it's still at its base very basic what they're giving you. It's because everything else is so bad. And so you've got to think of what helps, what is valuable to the consumer to get them to buy the thing and like it. Like, you don't want them just to buy it. That's a really bad mentality.
Right.
They got to like it and want to come back for more and feel good about their purchase.
It'll be interesting to see. I think, your point on data, I think you have all these slivers of what that company knows about you, right? So Hulu understands what some of my profile, Disney Plus, another, Amazon Prime, a different version, and each of them have a different algorithm to try to predict what parts of their catalog they should surface to me, so they can keep me tuned in. And I do think, back to your data point about the government, when will we reach a point that there's a more universal profile, and who controls that?
Well, that's been talked about for a long time. I remember years ago, Ted Leonsis at AOL said, we all need a single digital identity. I'm like, no, we don't. Like, no. Like, it was, but of course, he was like, yeah, it'll be easy. But then you do have to think about that.
Right.
But that's where we're headed. We're 100%.
We're starting to get that way. But there's so many silos and implications just to move.
You kind of have one right now. You have a passport, you have a license.
Right.
The question is who controls it. That's always the case.
Right.
And in countries, authoritarian countries, China's a surveillance economy as far as I'm concerned. That's what they are. And we don't want that here in this country, for sure.
You talked about how silly it is that we're still using search the way that we are, just typing things in, and it seems like AI is just poised to fundamentally change search. And by the way, I think that toddlers seem to know that more than adults do, because they just talk to the sky, change music, do this, what should I? But can you talk a little bit about how AI might be changing search in the future?
It's not going to exist the way it is. Right. Just isn't. It's not. It's going to be integrated into everything.
Yes.
I worry for Google. Finally, now the Justice Department is getting around to dealing with the monopoly. Well, technology is getting around to dealing with it. It'll be integrated. Like, I was just at Snapchat, and they're integrating it into that, like telling you like what restaurants you're near, because they know your proximity to things. Everyone will have it, and so search will be dissipated everywhere. And so Google's really spent a lot of time not innovating their search.
Right.
They've just missed the boat on this, and I happen to like those people, but gosh, this is really a problem for them. And so anyone with a relationship with a consumer, I think Amazon's poised for great things for this. Microsoft is trying. It's got a lot of stuff you interact with every day, including gaming. You don't realize how much gaming Microsoft
absolutely.
owns. And so search will be everywhere, and you won't even know it, including relationships with restaurants, with all kinds of things. So I think that's the implication.
I agree. I think it'll be much more contextual and much more proactive. So it will understand where you are, what you need in that moment, and start to help serve it up for you.
So Apple's poised to be a very powerful player because you're interacting with their devices. Google could through its Android, but that's so dissipated, it's harder. Right. So you have to think about each company. Amazon and Apple are the two companies I think have the most to gain from this.
Yeah, I was going to say, who would you bet on? It sounds like Amazon and Apple.
And some little company you never heard of.
Okay, lightning round here. Is AI a destroyer of humanity or its savior? Give us a sentence or two in support of your answer. And I'm going to go Brian first.
You go first.
If you're going with AI, I'm leaning towards savior, but watch out for the destroyer. Like, just let's build in those responsible gaps to keep us from doing things that are stupid.
Yeah, I'm firmly in the camp of both. It can do amazing things. You talked about AlphaFold, being able to figure out protein folding, immense cures for diseases we never could have thought of. But also, we already have tools that can do research-grade chemistry. Your 8th grader has access to the schematics for nerve gas. So that's really frightening to me. We're giving people both immense capability to create immense good in the world and immense destruction. So we do need those guardrails. We need people thinking about these things all the way through. So I am saying squarely down the middle, I lean more towards the optimist, but keenly aware of where things could go wrong.
Yeah, I have a saying, AI doesn't kill people, people kill people. That's the way it goes. All history. We are our problem. We're the enemy is us in that regard. So.
That is an optimistic view
Sorry.
to end this panel on, but thank you.
thing.
No, it is a good thing. Actually, it is a good thing. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your time. And Kara, I've been a fan of yours for years and years as an ex-AOLer. So
I'm not going to tell you what's going to happen on Succession, but it's good.
Can't wait. Thank you.